as the first video in a series of 3 in which we talk about hypothesis testing, and we'll continue our transition from moving from descriptive statistics into inferential statistics, in which we are aiming to make predictions and test claims about populations based on data from our sample or our samples. And we know from previous videos that we need to be able to both provide point estimates as well as interval estimates in which to do so. Things like calculating the mean and the confidence intervals using our particular data. And so if you've not yet watched the videos on parameter estimation, I would strongly encourage you to go back and do so before you watch this video. So, the basis of science is that we are creating questions based on observations that we have, and then we are devising predictions about the potential causes of the observations that we're making. And these predictions, or these claims, are hypotheses. And our ultimate goal is to determine how strongly we support or reject these particular claims. And these claims are what are then going to determine how we create a particular study. And ideally, our study will provide us with the appropriate data in which we can test how accurate those particular hypotheses are concerning the population of interest. And so this fits into this broad process called the scientific method, and the construction or the creation of hypotheses occurs quite early on, after which we go through the data collection and analysis phase. And the reason for this is that in order to design an appropriate study, we need to know which hypotheses or which claims we are aiming to test with the data that we're collecting. So the basic idea is that we're trying to distinguish between 2 different events, such that either the event occurs by chance easily, or the event occurs is very unlikely to have occurred by random chance. And so, for instance, getting 4 aces in a deck of cards is a very unlikely occurrence. And then we can use the data that we've collected to decide between these 2 competing claims. Is it likely that the event occurred by random chance, or is it unlikely that the event occurred by random chance? So let's think about something that might be familiar to us based on probability theory, are jury trials. So in a jury trial, there are 2 potential outcomes. Either the defendant is innocent or the defendant is guilty. And in the United States, the default of the court is that the defendant is innocent until that person is proven guilty. And so this assumption of innocence is our default hypothesis. In science, we call it our null hypothesis, denoted by H naught, and that this is what we are testing against in the jury trial. Now, similar to probability and our binomial distribution, we don't just have 1 potential outcome, we've got 2 potential outcomes. In the event that the person is not innocent, well, then the person would be found guilty. This is the alternative to the null hypothesis, and so this is our alternative hypothesis. So if the jury finds the defendant not guilty, what they're saying is that they're failing to reject the null hypothesis. They're failing to reject the hypothesis that this particular person is innocent. There's not enough evidence in which to suggest that the person might be guilty. Now, if there is enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis, well, then we are supporting our alternative hypothesis. Now, this gets us to some important terminology that's key when we're thinking about science and statistics. The first of which is that here we're talking about hypotheses, not theories. Oftentimes in public media, hypotheses and theories are synonymized, and these are 2 very separate things in science. Hypotheses are claims that we're testing. Maybe they've been untested previously, or they've only been tested a few times, and we're still deciding on whether we should be supporting or rejecting these all the time. A theory is a hypothesis that's been tested so much that it's ubiquitously true in all situations. And so for statistics, making sure that we're using the words hypothesis rather than theory is going to be key. The other important terminology term is that we're not saying that hypotheses are true or false. We're either supporting hypotheses, or we are rejecting hypotheses. So these are two key things that we're thinking about for vocabulary, both for this class as well as your career in marine biology moving forward. So we've got this claim or this statement that we are then testing against. And the key for devising hypotheses is that we need to be able to test them to determine if they're correct or incorrect. Again, we're not going to be saying that a hypothesis is true or false, but it needs to be falsifiable. So our null hypothesis, again, is this claim that's initially assumed to be true. This is our default. This is our claim of innocence when the defendant walks into the courtroom. And oftentimes, this is what we are testing against. This is our default. And we'll talk about this as we go through one of the examples later in the video. The alternative hypothesis is the competing claim. And we're going to reject the null hypothesis only if the evidence from our sample is strong enough to suggest that the null hypothesis is not true. So again, we're not saying that it's not true, but we will be rejecting that null hypothesis. And the reason for this is that if the null hypothesis isn't true, then the alternative hypothesis must be true. If the defendant is not innocent, well, then the defendant must be guilty. And again, this fits back into our rules of probability and the binomial distribution. Now, when we're thinking about the null hypothesis, we're thinking about a particular characteristic of a population equaling some type of hypothesized value. The alternative hypothesis can fit a variety of different forms. It could just simply be that that characteristic does not equal the hypothesized value, or it could be that it's greater than or less than that hypothesized value. Depending on the question of interest, will dictate the alternative hypothesis that we match to our null hypothesis. And we're going to aim to use our data and statistical tests in which to falsify the null hypothesis. Again, this is a straw man, meaning that we're trying to knock it down. We're actually trying to falsify the null hypothesis using the data and the statistical tests at our disposal. Now, if the probability that the null hypothesis is true is really small, then it's suggesting that it's false. And so we've got enough evidence to say that our alternative hypothesis is more likely than the null hypothesis. So we're rejecting the null hypothesis. But if the probability that the null hypothesis is true is pretty large, we have a lack of evidence to support the alternative hypothesis, then we'll fail to reject the null hypothesis. So let's think about this in a more tangible example. So let's say that we are studying red snapper in the Gulf of Mexico. Based on published data, the size of age 2 red snapper in the ecosystem is 19.5 centimeters. This is published and well known. But we've been working out in the Gulf of Mexico recently, and the conditions have been really, really favorable for the growth of fish. Maybe there's more food, maybe temperatures optimal, maybe fewer predators. And we're interested if the size of these fish at age 2 is actually greater than what the published value is. This is oftentimes something that we do in science. We look at our data, we compare it to previously published data, and we see if there's any kind of difference there. Now, just because our intuition is telling us that these fish is greater does not mean that is what our null hypothesis is. In fact, the null hypothesis is based on our published values. It's our default assumption. Based on all the data up to this point, it shows that the Gulf of Mexico age 2 red snapper are 19.5 centimeters in total length. So our null hypothesis is that the body length of these fish is the published value. Now, the alternative hypothesis, again, can take several forms. It could just simply be that the body length is not 19.5 centimeters, or it could be that it's greater than or less than this published value. Now, based on our experience, our alternative hypothesis in this particular example is that the body length of these fish is significantly larger than 19.5 centimeters. We'll use data and statistical tests in which to determine if this alternative hypothesis should be supported or if the null hypothesis should be supported. And so ideally, we're seeking to demonstrate the difference in the published data. We're seeking to reject the null hypothesis using our data and scientific testing. So based on our question and based on our hypothesis, we then need to come up with some type of statistical framework in which to test this. And the goal then is to determine, okay, is the difference that we're observing likely to have occurred by random chance? We just happened to observe these fish on a really good day, or was it unlikely to have occurred by random chance and that these fish are indeed larger than 19.5 centimeters in total length? So the goal is we use these hypotheses, we go out and we collect our data, and then we can examine the evidence to determine the likelihood of the null hypothesis having occurred or the alternative hypothesis being true. Again, we're not proving or disproving anything, we're just simply seeing which is more likely to be the case. Now, if the results are likely to have occurred by random chance and that the null hypothesis is being supported because of the default that we're meeting, then we're going to fail to reject the null hypothesis. But if the results are highly unlikely based on all of our particular assumptions, then we'll reject that null hypothesis. Again, noting the vocabulary here. And so the goal here is to collect enough data in which we can make a reasonable determination whether to reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. And it's going to be based on the probability of obtaining some test statistic that is as extreme or more extreme than a particular value if the null hypothesis was indeed true in the real world. So this would be if we were to go out and sample fish that are age 2 and they're much larger than 19.5 centimeters in total length, what's the likelihood that we could go back out and do this again and that it occurs by random chance? And the way that we do this is looking at the sampling distribution, and we look at the area under the curve of interest, as we discussed, looking at the standard normal distribution and our probability distributions. Now, the smaller the proportion of the area under the curve means the smaller the probability of selecting a sample that falls in that part of the distribution. And the smaller that is, the stronger the evidence is going to be against the null hypothesis because it's unlikely this is just occurring by random chance. So if we look at our probability distribution for our red snapper here, and we've got our mean that's published of 19.5 centimeters. Well, let's say we go out and we collect our data and the mean of our fish are 21 centimeters. Well, this isn't so different from 19.5 centimeters. So we might then say, well, it seems like they're bigger, but maybe they're not. It seems like by random chance we might have just caught these fish on a really good day. But let's say that our mean happens to be 3 centimeters larger. Well, we're moving further towards the extreme of the distribution. And so the likelihood that we're getting this extreme value by random chance is decreasing. And we're basing this on the probability of landing within this portion of the curve that's shaded. What is the likelihood that by random chance we happen to have a mean that's 22.5 centimeters in total length or greater? And this area under the curve, this likelihood, this probability, is discerned as the p-value. This area shaded under the curve is indicating to us how likely are we going to get an extreme value or a more extreme value. Now, if this area under the curve, this p-value is large, this proportion under the curve is large, well then there's not a lot of evidence against the null hypothesis. It seems like we could have ended up in this part of the curve based on random chance, so we're going to fail to reject the null hypothesis. However, if that area under the curve is very small, if the p-value is very small, then we have a lot of support against the null hypothesis. It's pretty unlikely this extreme value occurred by random chance, so we're going to reject the null hypothesis. So, In general, the smaller the p-value, meaning the smaller the probability under that distribution is, the stronger the evidence is against the null hypothesis, meaning that there's more support for the alternative hypothesis, and so we will then fail to reject the null hypothesis when the support is overwhelmingly against it. Now, we're going to spend some more time in the next 2 lectures discussing this. We'll talk about this in class, but I would strongly suggest going to section 6.3 of the text and making sure you feel comfortable with some of the vocabulary and the basic concepts of hypotheses and hypothesis testing. We'll continue this into the next lecture as we further discuss hypothesis testing and start talking about some more examples.